I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook, baby.
All right.
Welcome
Okay.
back after so we didn't have an episode last week because Joe loves his mom.
Yeah.
We'll make it up to you. Maybe.
Yeah.
No, we will. We have patrons, so we actually do have to do stuff like that. We haven't missed an episode in a very long time. I feel like probably since like my honeymoon. We haven't gone any time, and you even did some solo ones and
holidays and maybe like the week of Christmas or Thanksgiving we probably didn't record.
Maybe not. We'll never know. So we're gonna do a podcast about a podcast today, which is down there with the prostitutes and manual laborers of work. I'm kidding.
Yep.
I've been really, I'm gonna say Byzantine maxing. I have a whole Joe. My entire fiction writing future has been splayed in front of me. Like I've had a revelation of what I'm going to do. So I'll keep it short, but I've been learning a lot about the Byzantine Empire and Justinian's wife, Theodora, who a lot of people know. Like Justinian was like the probably most well-known Byzantine emperor. Of course, they called themselves Romans, but she was a dancer and likely a prostitute. Like an actor, and I like to remind my wife that actors were kind of looked at as the lowest of the low in terms of social class.
Oh yeah.
So I like to bring that up very often. She appreciates that.
Oh, some Byzantine. Speaking of which, didn't you release, or aren't you working on a project or about to release?
Thank you.
That's kind of related.
I'm the absolute worst about self-promotion because I totally forgot about that. Yeah, so I'll be quick with this. A friend of mine who Joe met at my wedding. You were both in my wedding party.
Yeah.
We are big. I probably don't talk about a lot on the podcast. We're actually big like trading card game fans, specifically Pokemon. Like we love it every time we get together. He lives like we grew up literally next door to each other. So we live about 2 hours away from each other now. So whenever we get together, we kind of play for hours and we do drafts. And what happened was trading card game people will understand the concept of like power creep. Where basically old cards kind of become useless. So we get new cards, but edit. So basically, long story short, I was more or less making my own Pokemon cards. Again, nothing illegal. I wasn't selling them or anything, but I was editing them, changing them on the computer, printing stuff. And then it came to the point where it's like, why don't we make our own game? So we did. And in less than a year, and again, we put a lot of work into this, but I have some here. We created our own trading card game, which is available for sale right now. I'll hold them up to the camera. The game is called Sceptre. So Sceptre TCG. It is Middle Ages inspired. So that's like the flavor of it is the Middle Ages. What I like to call it is, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of like high fantasy tabletop trading card game stuff. Like, orcs and wizards and all, like there's a dime a dozen, right? So what I want to do is I think there's a market out there for like a much more realistic Middle Ages trading card game, which, yes, it has some what I call like low fantasy, but it's a lot more of like religion and folklore and legends where the champions who are fighting are like Crusaders and Seljuk Mamluks and French Knights and that sort of stuff. And while there are other cards that create more fantastical elements, it's much more about stuff like cards like Exorcism, Confession, Harvest Moon, like different sorts of stuff that is a little more grounded. Because I do, as someone who's really kind of involved in this stuff online, like I call it Crusades Twitter, there's a huge market for, I think, for more real stuff represented in trading card games instead of like the overly stylized, like huge weapons and and elves and orcs and all that shit. Which again, I love. I grew up on that stuff. I grew up on Warcraft. I get it. I adore it. So why you bring that up is because one of the origins is what we call them. We have 8 origins right now. One is the Byzantine Empire. There's the Kingdom of France, the Seljuk Sultanate, the Knights Templar, et cetera, et cetera. So you can get these cards right now. Only booster packs are available, but that's changing very soon, probably within the next, at max, I would say 2 weeks, probably less than that, that you can get starter decks where you can buy a starter deck and you can play with someone else who has that. It comes with everything that you need. Or if you have dice and you have damage counters, you can buy the cheaper starter deck that just has the cards. It's very, very cool to see your product created, much like creating my books. It's very cool to have that physical thing that you worked sometimes a year or more on. This game, we think it's very, comprehensive and robust in its mechanics. Has a lot of fun flavor. It's not all like serious. Like, yes, we have cards like the Plague and Pox and Exorcisms. We have that stuff, but we also have funny cards. We have like Chastity Belt, which is a nod to some things that might not, like Chastity Belts likely never even existed. Right. But Flatulist, like that was a real guy, a guy who would fart for the king, and that was a real person who his name was Roland the Farter, and he would fart for the English king once a year, and he had like an estate. The king liked it so much because farts are always funny. So we have that kind of stuff too, and you can get it. I'll send you a link, Joe, to put in the show notes. Thank you for giving me the time to share this. And then follow it on. I have a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and it's all available.
Yeah, and so we'll put that in the show description, and we'll be sharing that as well. So yeah, man, and the art's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah,
you all hand drawn. Every single card is hand drawn.
No, it is not. Unfortunately, while both my friend and I have many talents, I'm more of the head designer, mechanics, and he helps a lot with the mechanics too. He's more of the he is a wizard with spreadsheets and calculations. He's like the numbers guy. I'm more of the flavor, all of the descriptions, vast majority of the card names, and I'm the history guy, right? Neither of us are artists though. So yeah, the art is AI art, which I'm sure some people will find controversial. We did try to get artists. It is extremely expensive. We're a 2-person operation. Right now we have not even made money. We have lost money. We have had some good sales, but we are still in the red. And eventually we would love to have artists do all of our work. But this set has, let me check real quick, 236 cards, which is huge for a first set. So it's 236 separate pieces of art. And I look at it as, we're a 2-person operation. We're going to use the technology that's available to us to, like, this is just simple capitalism. We're trying to lower the cost so that we can keep costs low for the consumer. And that's what's available to us. So, but I'm sure some people have issues with that. Again, we've done episodes, my fucking cat, sorry. We've done episodes about AI. These are not going in any museums. These are not going in contests to compete for anything artistic. These are simply to accompany a trading card game.
Ben and I are also AI generated anyway, and no one's noticed. So I think we're fine. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. The art looked really cool. So we'll be sure to push that out. And yeah, keep us updated, man. Let us know when you got some updates and some new launches and whatnot.
Yeah, if anyone, we're gonna be playing mostly in like South Jersey area, Philly, maybe some North Jersey, maybe New York if there's a demand for it eventually. Most of my friends who are into trading cards are more either Philly, Southeast Pennsylvania, Delaware area. So that's where we will mostly be playing.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on to the main subject for this one, for this episode. So this is from the Free Press, which we frequently reference. But they're so damn good. So,
they are good. I think they have a array of different writers and contributors, different opinions. Mostly, I think some opinions they might not, but that's fine.
Yeah. And I think, Ben and I, we do a good job of like taking these really thoughtful opinions and then putting them through like this really simplistic, low class filter. So
yeah,
I think that
yeah, we're like that's in every like sci-fi movie. They have to have the dumbed down explanation of a difficult topic.
Yeah.
Like jumping through time, and they'll like fold a piece of paper and put a pencil through it, and like
yeah,
we're trying to that's our podcast.
Okay, so this is from an article / podcast called American Vulgarity, from Lenny Bruce to Kanye West. And this is by Eli Lake, who I think we've mentioned on the show before. So I don't have access to the full article, but I did listen to the full podcast though.
Yeah, I did too. I didn't read any of the article. But I did listen to the entire podcast. Like finished it 15 minutes ago.
Is it cool if I read like a few paragraphs,
sure.
and then we'll just kind of kick off the conversation from there.
Sure.
On May 8th, Kanye West released his latest single. It's called Heil Hitler. In the music video, men in pelts dance as the troubled performer complains about his custody battles for his children and how no one understands him on Twitter, and literally sings Heil Hitler. Even in our post-woke 2025, a song in praise of the Führer violated one of our culture's remaining taboos. No major streaming platform offers Ye's song to its customers, but it didn't matter. As of May 16th, West's X post introducing the Heil Hitler video had 9.7 million views. Certain users on the platform, such as former mixed martial arts fighter Jake Shields, took a victory lap. This summer, we will have whites, blacks, Mexicans, Asians, Muslims, and even anti-Zionist Jews all singing, Shields posted on X. Ye might be the man to heal the nation and bring us all back together as Americans first.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I'm not going crazy. I tried to listen to the song. I couldn't find it on Spotify.
Okay.
And that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Also, I'm like, does Kanye even go by Kanye anymore? I never really liked Kanye, to be honest. And I don't know. I didn't love like how he called himself a genius and all that stuff. I found him kind of funny as a meme.
Yeah.
More recently, but this. Yeah, so this is a small part of the podcast, and it's at the end, but this is fine. We can start here because a lot of it is about taboos. And I think that it's wrong that you can't listen to it on any major streaming platform.
Right. Because
I don't see this taking off. Like this feels like it solely exists for its because it's taboo. And if you just take away the taboo, like this does feel like there are more complicated ones, but I don't think this is very difficult. Like I think people will look at this and be like, what are you talking about? Like, this is just stupid.
Yeah.
Jake Shields, I think what is he? Do you say he's an MMA fighter?
Yeah, he's a former MMA fighter and now he's a podcaster.
Yeah.
I followed him for a little bit. I stopped it's not like I'm super, and I've said this before, like I don't really have a definitive stance on the Israel-Palestine thing. He's just super, super anti-Israel and just like really just everything's about the Jews and everything's like, hey, that manifesto that Osama bin Laden put out, read it because he makes some good points. So he's one of those like, this is getting a little too.
Yeah. I don't think I never followed him, but I can like see his picture in my head. Yeah. And he will just like pop up in my feed. Yeah. And I've been very vigilant about trying as much as possible to stick to following instead of for you on Twitter. Yeah. But since I've made a Sceptre Twitter, which everyone should go follow, I realized when you switch back, it puts you in for you.
Yeah.
Which is really annoying. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've heard this guy and like someone else. Is it the Martyr Made guy? Again, I'm not in these podcast spaces as much as I listen to some what you would call like heterodox or right-wing. Like I never liked this kind of stuff. I also don't like MMA. Yeah. So that side of like, let's say if you're talking like the Rogan sphere, like I never was interested in that.
Right.
But it does feel like it's solely for shock value. And that's the guy, I cut myself off there. That's the guy who was talking about, and this is in the Eli Lake podcast, about how like Winston Churchill's the real villain of World War II. And it's like, dude, no, he's fucking not.
Right.
Like, that's just like, I'm not angry about that stuff from you're trying to, and like the shock value of it. I'm annoyed from the historical perspective.
Right.
And it's just fucking dumb. And I'm sure if he was here and he would start listing off stats and all stuff. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, the UK, Britain didn't invade their neighbors. Like, they didn't, well, actually they invaded Ireland, but like they didn't invade these other countries. They didn't put people in camps. They didn't do this sort of stuff. They didn't try to genocide people. I'm not saying, like, I'm sure that there would be some points where it's like, oh, they weren't great, but it's like, yeah, that's like saying the USA are the villains because we put Japanese people in internment camps. Like, no, we were in war. It was a bad decision.
Yep.
There probably were spies, by the way, because there always are. Yep. But like, that's always the balance of order and liberty. I tend to lean more towards order now anyway, but like, that doesn't mean there aren't downsides to it. But like, no, FDR was not the villain of World War II.
Right.
Like,
yeah, there's a point where heterodox goes so far that where it's just like extreme contrarianism for its own sake.
It's the same problem it comes from the same place that crits go to when they usually are in spaces where there is no opposition.
Right.
Moderates are Nazis. So it's who can go more and more left. And this ends up, and this is why all these NGOs, these socialist coffee shops, these co-op, like, they all implode because it gets more and more insane. And these happen in places like Portland and Seattle and San Francisco, and, you know, tiny communities all over the country who, it's just who can be more pure. And this is the same, like, while I don't think it's parallel, it's not like a facsimile of that with the heterodox, it is that same bone. It's that same contrarian. It's like, oh, well, we've defeated this group. Now it's like, well, we have to start changing who the villains are in World War II. So when Jake Shields is saying, I'm going to, assume your quote is correct about all these people groups coming together to celebrate, like, what are you trying to accomplish here?
Right.
Like, if you really, like, if you want to make the argument, okay, there were even like there were bad, like, atrocities happened on both sides. Fine. I'm sure like that can be true in some circumstances, but like to talk about celebrating one side is not the same thing as being like, well, the British and Americans did some fucked up stuff too. Like, that's called nuance. And that's actually what heterodox is about. Right. Not being like, well, now we're just going to celebrate the Nazis.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not cool. That's dumb. Like, that's low IQ shit.
Yeah. And getting back to your point about, how, this song is being, it's not allowed to be platformed. I think that the vast majority of people who would listen to that song or watch that music video are not going to be inspired by it. It's probably more of like a freak show thing. Like, is this real? Like, it's more just like, like the seeing like the car accident on the side of the road where it's like, it's a disgusting thing, but you're also sort of like, this is crazy. What the fuck's going on here?
Yeah.
I don't think that it would lead to, a resurgence of the KKK or anything like
the American Bund. Yeah. Also, those guys who aren't even like a thing anymore. Like, I think neo-Nazism is very minor. Like, it had a heyday in like I think the 90s and in places like Oregon. Like, it was actually a very West Coast thing. Yeah. They all hated black people.
Yep.
Like, they're not like unless, they didn't. I think they would. It would be hilarious if neo-Nazis were complaining that Kanye was culturally appropriating their culture. That could be like a sketch. Someone can take, whoever wants to. I'm not a comedian, so whoever wants to take that, go for it. But that would be very funny. Yeah, like a American History X group, like complaining that Kanye West is taking their
And then he starts saying normal, sane things. Like, hey, I don't like neo-Nazis anymore. We're like, good, finally. He goes, yeah, they won't let me in. And it's like, okay, well, now that's not a good reason not to like them.
Yeah. So yeah, this was a small part of it. I think the point Eli Lake was saying, and again, you read the article, so it's obviously important, but it's like, what are the taboos now? And why I really wanted to talk about this episode was because it brings this podcast back literally to episode 1 in
That's right.
What was it, like June, July of 2021?
Yeah.
Where we discussed Lenny Bruce.
Yeah. Because he was like the first modern comedian. Up until that point, like comedians were sort of like, snappy one-liners, and maybe some innuendos here and there. But he was the one who was just sort of like, hey, let's talk about that one night stand that I had, last week. Hey, let's talk about that time I got wasted. And
the only thing I want to say is like he is. I don't even know if I would say he's the modern comedian. I think he was the modern comedian of a certain time.
Right.
But by the end of the podcast, Lenny Bruce is actually saying things that are more taboo today than they in places like The Village than they were in 1962 in The Village or in like, and part of that is, so if you don't, I guess, do we need to, okay, so who Lenny Bruce even was. So he was a comedian who started out, like you said, very much like kind of comedian, like very just witty, smart, snappy. Yeah. And then he became what I think now you would call like more blue, and he became much more, to use the legal term, obscene. And it was kind of like feeding the fire. And he would start getting arrested because he would break these Comstock laws and obscenity laws in places, which is so crazy, in places like San Francisco and New York, which now we hold as like these bastions of liberalism. Like he was getting arrested in these places, and he would say words like, motherfucker and cocksucker, and he would be openly sexual. And honestly, he would say something like, he got to the point where he was ruined. The legal bills. He became someone who would just start reading statutes and depositions on stage, and then he couldn't get work. Obviously became a drug addict, and he died of suicide. It's speculated whether it was accidental or not. I learned that the day he died, he had gotten a notice that his home was being foreclosed on, which apparently he loved in Hollywood Hills. Yeah. So, he was saying stuff at the end of his run that like is just gross. Yeah. And stuff that what's really interesting is that he got arrested many, many times, charged for saying things about like, sexual things. He would talk about gay things. He also would get up there and just say the N-word like 50 times. Yeah. And he never got arrested for that. Right. Ever. He which is kind of shows you where, which is interesting because it shows you where like the morals are and what's acceptable, where now it's completely reversed. Yeah. You could get up there and say the most, and he has this joke that I just find distasteful, but maybe something that Louis C.K. could say something along these lines where I'll just say the joke. It's a boy looks up at his dad and I don't know. He says something. I forget what it is, but he says something like, "What does degenerate mean?" or something. Yeah, like what's degenerate mean? And the dad goes, like, "Shut up and keep sucking," or something like that. And it's like, oh Jesus Christ, and that would be totally allowed today. Like you might get some like you might get booed, but you're not gonna get ruined. Where if you get up and you say the N-word 50 times, like you'll get ruined. Right. And it was, and his point that he was trying to make, he wasn't just masturbating, so to speak. He was trying to prove like if you say the word a bunch, and I think Kennedy was president then. Like Kennedy was introducing his cabinet and saying it a bunch, like you take the power away from it. Right. That's not even close to being allowed anymore. In fact, there have been, I don't know how this would work now, but like there were students like 2020, 2021 who are losing their scholarships because they got caught, singing along to a rap song.
Yep.
5 years earlier, which was totally allowed at the time.
Yep.
And they would like lose their scholarship or like their spot somewhere. And again,
Yeah.
they didn't get caught calling someone that.
Right.
They didn't get caught yelling at a black person saying that. It was just singing along to a song that at the time was allowed, or else the person like they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Well,
I think one of the most egregious examples of that was remember there were those two main sort of survivors of, I think it was the Parkland school shooting, and one of them was very progressive, which is David Hogg, I think, and then there's one who went down a more conservative route. He was the one, I think he got accepted to Harvard or some Ivy League school.
Yeah.
And but then somebody, resurfaced, it was like a text exchange where he said he used the N-word like 4 years prior or something like that. And it's like, yeah, that was a stupid thing, but so they made him write a letter, an apology to the school, and then they still rescinded the offer.
Right.
Like,
that was the height of like the craziness. Like that is so insane. That, I mean, we're past that now. I like to believe, but that just kind of showed like where we were as a culture with it was like a witch hunt type atmosphere where it was pulling up evidence from years ago. It was, taking things out of context. What I like to say is I know I brought this up on the show before, but it's like, I went to a lot of bar mitzvahs growing up. I'm not Jewish, but I lived in a very Jewish area. And there would be this guy who would come around. He was like during cocktail hour, his name was Monty. And he was like a walking encyclopedia. That was his shtick. And you could say any topic. You could say football, Shakespeare, hip hop, like whatever it was. And he would have trivia and he would hand out real money. I think they were like silver dollars. He would hand out silver dollars, or I forget, I believe that's what it was. And one of the questions was, and again, this was like 2003, 2004, who sang whatever the song was. Maybe it was "Fuck the Police." Maybe it was whatever. I forget what the question was, but the answer was NWA.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was what does NWA stand for? I don't remember exactly, but my friend Justin, like raised his hand, of course. Like we loved rap at the time. We all knew the answer. He got picked and he was like, well, I know the answer. I don't know if I can say it. And Monty's like, oh, no. It's fine. It's a proper noun. Like you're just answering the question. And then he says it and that's it. That was recorded. Like my friend Justin, he could have lost. He went to a very good school. He could have like lost if that happened instead of 2004, if that happened like 2014, 2018, he might have not gone into a school because he answered a question at a bar mitzvah. Right. It's just the technology at the time. We all have flip phones and this wasn't the iPhone era. So like people weren't recording all the time. Like that's how that's crazy shit that could change the trajectory of your life. Now, honestly, this kid was probably a blessing not to go to Harvard where that school's gone, but still, I do vaguely remember that. But anyway, so I thought that was very interesting about Lenny Bruce. And, he is a tragic figure. He is kind of the godfather of free speech. And he did, press the boundaries and broke through these taboos that now it's almost like we may have in some ways, and you can chime in on this, is like what Eli Lake talks about is now we have songs like Wet Ass Pussy. Yeah. And that is a bop. That is, mainstream hip hop song. Right. I don't like, and I use Wet Ass Pussy as an example of, I love the song It's Raining Men, like unironically. I think that's a great song. I think it's fun. Yeah. That song's about being a dirty whore. Yeah. That is about laying in bed and soaking wet. That's one of the lines. It's Raining Men and Wet Ass Pussy are about the same thing. Yeah. But one of them is tactful and catchy and the other is just abrasive. Yeah. And so it's like I almost miss that more. Like I miss that part of it more where it's not so much like you should, don't get me wrong, you should be allowed to make Wet Ass Pussy. Yeah. But like, do we need it? Like, do we need to make that? And does a song like "It's Raining Men" contribute more to like music canon?
Right. No, I agree with you. Where it's like, yeah, of course, if it becomes popular, and that's what people want, or that just happened to be the flavor of the week or flavor of the month or whatever, then that's fine. I don't really care about that. Nor am I someone who's like, well, it's contributing to the degradation of morals in society. It's like, I doubt that. But yeah, in terms of like a purely creative or artistic standpoint, well, it's funny because like we've talked about this before too, where it's like sex in movies and TV shows, and you don't hear too much about, oh, that movie has this big sex scene anymore. It's like, yeah, but like 90% of HBO shows have like, it's like, oh, we need to have a 23-minute orgy scene. We need to have as many penises in this scene. So it's like, yeah, now sex is just like every HBO show needs to have tons and tons of sex now. So it's like,
well, sex has had a comeback. I know that.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot. It did feel like there was a stretch where there was like, there just wasn't sex anymore in movies.
Right.
And if there was, it was more of like a punchline comedic effect type thing.
Yeah.
And sex definitely has had a comeback, and you can tell it's much more even, as in, I just saw Sinners, right? Great movie.
Oh yeah.
Loved it. They definitely make an effort to show box eating, so to speak,
Yeah.
so, and which has also been, if the stereotypes, like a stereotype of what black men don't do.
Right.
Again, stereotype. So like they definitely go out of their way, and that's what I'm noticing more. It's much more like male frontal, making up for years and years and years of tits and ass and 90% female nakedness, nudity. So that is what I'm noticing. But this, like, I don't think what will ever come back is the sex scene.
Right.
That was very much I think a time of like the 70s through the early mid 2000s. There was the sex scene. Then I feel like sex basically went away. It became like Bridesmaids and
like the Judd Apatow
book smart, Judd Apatow, but like that kind of comment. 40-Year-Old Virgin. Literally, the whole point of the movie is he doesn't have sex, and when he does try, he keeps messing up. Then I feel like there's just absent entirely, and now there is. I think they're making up for lost time where there's tons of sex, but it is, it's just different. It's more real. I think that's fine. And again, I want to go back. I'm not. Like, I don't want people to think like I'm being moralistic about this stuff. Like, I've written novels that, like some of my books are explicit with this stuff. Some of it's political. In my dystopian books, the first and then the sequel, I mean, there's some graphic sex things. Like I tell people, like, make sure you're okay with this kind of stuff. So I'm not anti this at all.
Sure.
I'm just looking at this more of like a cultural and artistic standpoint. So anyway, what were we talking about? Lenny Bruce?
But sort of like the breaking down of taboos, though.
Do you think? So let me ask you: do you think we will always have taboos?
I think so. Because especially now that politics have become so front and center in so many things. I think that I know that Jonathan Haidt has talked about kind of like the things that are considered taboo, like the differences between taboo and like the left and the right. So the right will be more offended by things like maybe too much sex and violence and maybe a lack of what they consider to be more traditional family values in entertainment, whereas the left, I think, will be more offended by negative stereotypes or how certain groups are not represented enough, or how there's not enough equality in something. So I think that there will always be taboos, and I think because there are times when I think taboos can be necessary, where it's like incest should be a taboo. Like
I agree, and I think there have been efforts to push some of those incest and then like pedophilia, where there are proponents and activists who are in the like pedophilia space.
Mm-hmm.
I know, not breaking, Blocked and Reported has done reporting on this where it's looked at as, I don't subscribe to this. I think if you have these thoughts, you have these issues, then that's something you have to bury and not ever act on.
Yeah.
Where there are activists who push like to have, for instance, dolls made of young children, so that's what these people will act on,
Right.
so it's not to do to. I don't believe that. I don't believe that works. I think the natural progression is now I want the real thing.
Right. Right.
And you know, so but that is like that's a taboo, and that is something that actually gets pushed in. And there's a word for, I'm forgetting what they don't even like to use. It's not pedophile anymore. It's like minor attracted persons.
That's
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
MAPS. Yeah. Minor attracted persons. And I don't know. I that like incest, obviously, I think I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones. I think people would think, oh, I'm a huge fan of incest. No, I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones, but incest is a big part of Game of Thrones.
Right.
Even my favorite dynasty in Game of Thrones, I'm a huge Targaryen fan. Their whole bloodline is made through incest. That's the whole, they're all about keeping the blood pure and having sister wives and all this stuff.
Right.
And that's a taboo in the show, in the books, where a different family is doing it, the Lannisters. That's not spoilers. So they're in the first episode.
Right.
But they're not Targaryen, so it's like that's not allowed. And even the later Targaryens weren't doing that anymore. But you know, that was, I think, pushing it where that wasn't nearly as. Now you can pretty much, and I'm starting to get fatigued of these. Pretty much every single now drama, true crime story, whatever it is, it keeps falling into either incest, pedophilia, a combination of both, human trafficking, usually children trafficking. Like it's always that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, because those are some of the most horrific things in our society.
Right.
But I'm like, I want some other stuff. Like I don't need every single twist to be it's child rape.
Right.
Like it's human traffic. Like I get it. Like there are other things out there that we can work with. But
and that's kind of the irony of it too, where it's like when it gets portrayed enough, then you're sort of like, yeah, well, this is not shocking anymore. Like, you know, I like one of my favorite twists, which is very tame by today's standards, but in Chinatown, where Jack Nicholson's character is talking to Fay Wray's character, and then he's like, hey, you know, who's that girl? And she goes, oh, she's my daughter. And he slaps her, and just right off the bat is taboo. He slaps her. She goes, "No, she's my sister." And then she's my sister. She's my daughter.
Yeah,
she's my sister
my
and
daughter.
She's my sister and my daughter. And it's like, oh, like that was you know, a pretty big reveal. But that would be that's pretty tame by today's standards now.
Yeah, yeah, that was big for the time. Actually, have you? I think it's in Californication. They're making a porno called Vagina Town. It's like, I remember that scene's in it with my sister, my daughter, my sister.
But yeah, I mean, it's and you know, there'll always be taboos in art, but yeah, the N-word though is an interesting. Well, because I mean, like, you know, it was used a lot more freely in movies in the 60s and 70s, and it was not considered as taboo, but you know, that's a taboo that's evolved though, or something that was not taboo, but now it is taboo.
Dude, it's so taboo now that it's like it's not even about offending someone, you know, like a black person, for instance, if it's the N-word, because it could be a group of white people, like the whitest people imaginable, and you couldn't say that, and you couldn't say it, like you couldn't drop it like that's my point, is that it's gotten like, dude, there used to be a term people would say when they would smoke weed, and like you N-word lipped it. Yeah. And that'd be like something people would just say, like everyone would say that.
Yeah.
I also remember this time, this memory came back to me today. So I was listening to this podcast where I went to, obviously I'm not going to name her. I'm to high school with this girl, like super liberal girl, right?
Yeah.
Like classic 2000s liberal. She went to I don't even want to say what college she went to, but she went to college in an inner city and not a good neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when we were back for one of the breaks or whatever, and like we were talking about, I don't know how we got on this. I don't know if it was apropos of anything, but I remember she went, "Oh no, there's a difference between N-words and black people," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
yeah.
I was like, "Holy shit!" Like you said that,
Yeah.
and that's like, to me, that's so crazy because she would be, if you transferred like and shifted all the politics from the late 2000s to when, you know, I was in high school and then went to college to like, let's say the late 2010s. Like we just moved all like a decade, right? And where she would land on the like, I'm sure, because this is what happens with most people, like she would be the exact kind of progressives that we're talking about now that we criticize now. So like that's where the politics, like just putting it on that map, that'd be unthinkable that someone with those politics would say that. And I don't know. I just remembered that because that stuck with me all these years. This was probably like 2009, 2010.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh my god. So yeah, so it has changed.
Yeah,
a lot.
Well, it's interesting, you know, like the quote unquote vibe shift and the reelection of Donald Trump, where it's like it just seemed like overnight you can say gay and retarded. Like, very liberally now.
Well, so I kind of never stopped saying gay. It's just I'm a kid of that era. I just think it's funny. Like I do think it's funny. Like I said, gay actually meant something before get like homosexual. Like it meant happy. Like that word itself has changed. And I think a lot of gay people now don't even call themselves gay. Like again, I mean that's not the point. The point is that like words change and it's how you use it. And Louis C.K. does a bit about this where he's like, and I don't use the word retarded. I never really I rarely did, but I don't mind people do it. And I don't use faggot anymore because I have learned some of the history about it. I know I just said it there, but I mean like calling someone it. Right. And again, the N word's totally different because as you can see, I'm saying the N word, but like faggot meant something differently. And I think that is more painful to people because it's used differently than gay. Like gay usually like joking around. Where faggot is used much more abrasively. But Louis C.K. does a bit where he's like, no, you got like I use faggot in a way that's, you know, anyone could be a faggot. Like there could be two gay guys blowing each other. And it's like, oh, look at them. That's two homosexual men like having a good time. But if one takes the dick out of his mouth and goes, people from Phoenix are Phoenician, I'm like, faggot. That's like faggot. Like, so that's how I feel about gay, basically. But you know what's funny? I'm watching my wife and I are watching Broadchurch. You ever seen Broadchurch?
No.
It's a British show. It's Olivia Colman. It's like a decade old. So it's like it's like early 2010s, I think 2012, 2013, 14 era. And the British, like they're calling cigarettes fags in that show still. And I'm
it's funny because I mean, like if you go to Urban Dictionary, there are two different definitions for the phrase "smoke a fag," and so like the British one means one, and an American means to kill a homosexual.
Like, do British people now still say "fag" for cigarette?
I don't know,
but like they're saying in the show, I'm like, oh, I go like, I don't know. Well, any British listeners out there, let us know if you say fag. For a cigarette. But anyway, I don't use that term. But I do. I always use gay because it's still. I don't know. I think it's funny.
Oh, that is.
And I'm not saying it to hurt any gay people. And I think it's funny. Like when Willem Dafoe was playing a gay character in Boondock Saints, and the guy's like snuggling with him. He's like they said sex, and he's like, "What are you, a fag?"
Well, I've always used retarded, but it's getting. I'm already sick of it now. Sometimes I use it, but like I'll listen to like some comedian podcasts, and they throw it around so much now. There's like, okay, this doesn't feel edgy anymore. It doesn't feel like. It just feels
it's kind of, that's like the catch-22 of words, right? It's like if you fight so hard, then you get it and you win. It's like the dog who caught the car. So well, now it's not fun anymore if I'm not owning the libs. Owning the libs is an addiction. Be careful.
Queer, same thing with that one because it seemed like that one seems to have gone has so many ups and downs. Like it's acceptable, it's unacceptable, it's acceptable, it's unacceptable.
Not only is it acceptable, it's like the preferred nomenclature.
Yeah,
in
because I remember just in my own lifetime, I remember it was like, oh yeah, you shouldn't call them that. It's not something that you can just just oh, so you're queer, right? Like that wasn't. But now it's like it's become more accepted.
Well, queer, because queer meant weird, but then it became like homosexual, and it became homosexual like a negative way, and now it's part of the alphabet soup that the acronym. And I think that for a lot of like anything, it's a shibboleth. Like I think if you're homosexual and you're like very progressive, you want to be called queer, not gay. Yeah. Where if you're homosexual and you're conservative, which there are a lot of, they probably just still say gay. Yep. Like queer is taking on a political meaning than just a identifier. Right. At least that's how I see it.
Is there anything more to say on this subject of the evolution of taboos?
Well, like usual, we go on tangent, which is fine. That's the part of the podcast. But you should listen to that podcast to get like a more historical overview of it. It's very good. Yeah. Again, I didn't know Eli Lake had a podcast, and I'm glad I saw this, and you had already listened to it, so I started following it. It's about history, but it has like varied topics. I noticed this is the most recent episode still, and I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. It's crazy though to think that people were getting arrested for like stand-up sets, which is kind of like that. It's just shifted now to culture. Like you can't arrest someone and ruin their life anymore for that, but you can still ruin their lives. In fact, it could be even worse. Like the last thing I'll say about it is like they talk about Carlin, who I don't know where I fall on Carlin. I know he is like a free speech warrior in a lot of ways. I think a lot of his stuff, I think if Carlin was around today, he wouldn't be very funny. I don't know. Maybe feel differently. I think he seemed super edgy for the time. Yeah. But I think a lot of his stuff was kind of just like, I think it was kind of lame, to be honest. I don't know. I'm sure I'd hear some stuff that I like, but it seemed kind of just like typical liberal anti-establishment. Anti-establishment where I didn't like the substance behind it didn't seem legit, but maybe I haven't listened to enough. Maybe I love Carlin. Who knows? But he got arrested in Milwaukee in the early 70s for the 7 bad words. Forget forbidden words or whatever. Yeah. And like he was arrested. Yeah, it's horrible. And so like being arrested sucks. Yeah. Going through that sucks. But like the charges were dropped and I don't think he was ever arrested again. And that was kind of like the death knell of it. Like within a decade, it completely flipped where Eli Lake talks about how the prosecutor who really pursued Lenny Bruce in New York and was very proud of that. A decade later, he was running for office in New York. I forget what it was for. It might have been for mayor, but I can't remember exactly. And he had to like hide from it, and his opponent used it against him. He got blown out in the election. Yeah. So just kind of is like that's how much it changed. So anyway, listen to it for that. So no, I don't have anything else to say about it.
All right. Well, you want to talk about the other backup subject, or you want to just dive into Reckless Rags?
Well, the other subject is it's just interesting, but I haven't. So basically, independent movie came out. It's called Better Half. Came out in 2023, and it's suing a movie called Together, which came out this year, or maybe it was 2024, 2025, for copyright. Which I feel like this stuff happens a lot, and it's not legit, even though things might sound similar. There might be some similar ideas. Obviously, the little guy is pissed off. To be honest, there's a book out there that I think sounds very similar to one of my books. I'm going to be honest. And it came out 2 years later. I got very upset about it. I contacted some lawyers because it pissed me off because did this person ever read my book and take that idea? I don't know, but maybe they saw it and they saw like, hey, I'm someone who the fuck is Ben DeLessio? Right. But like they might have seen the concept of it, taken it and wrote their own book, and they have an established audience, et cetera, et cetera. Did that happen? I don't know, but I was very upset. So I'm saying this to say, like, I know that feeling. I know that feeling like this is a independent movie that no one's heard about, that then Alison Brie and
Dave Franco.
And so Dave Franco, who are married in real life, like they're starring this movie. This was at all the film festivals, and apparently this movie, it's called Together, is like very much taken from the independent movie, where like exact scenes are replicated, where there's also evidence that Together, like they knew about this movie, as in you can't just hide behind coincidence. It's like there's evidence that the director, producer, whoever got a copy of it, and I don't know, I haven't seen either. This makes me want to see them both, but that's interesting enough that we will probably talk about that later, but there's nothing else to add for me.
Yeah. I'll say one more thing, because it used a term I'd never heard before. Scène-affaire. It's a French word. French phrase. Scène-affaire. It's basically a fancy way of saying cliches. And the reason why this is brought up is because it's specific types of scenes or elements that are very common within a specific genre. So, for example, like most zombie movies will have a scene where people are holed up in a building and they're boarding up the windows.
Sure.
Or romantic comedies will have like the kind of quirky, awkward, meet cute, where it's like, okay, this is so common. Like, that movie had the scene, but that's so common in this genre, the subgenre. So what they said, I'll just read the quote very quickly here. Scene after scene confirmed that defendants did not simply take stock ideas or a scène-affaire, but stole virtually every unique aspect of better half's copyrightable expression.
Dude, I'm reading though that like they literally stole the ending, like the same very specific movie. Like, I don't want to give stuff away because I haven't seen it either.
Yeah,
that they show at the end of one of the first movie of the independent movie, Better Half, is in that's not a coincidence.
Right.
Like that can't be a coincidence. That's not scène-affaire. That's you clearly did. You subconsciously do that? I don't know. This movie, basically the synopsis of this movie. This isn't giving anything away. Is like there's a one night stand and these couples are physically joined.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how, but they're physically joined, and then they have to, of course, you can imagine what happens from there.
Well, the original was more of a romantic comedy, whereas the Alison Brie, Dave Franco one, which came out this year, it builds more of a body horror film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that Together, which is the movie that's claimed to be ripping off the original, that the producers on that one were actually aware of the original script.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
That's, I mean, if they did that, dude, I want the little guys to just rake them through the coals, because that is so. It's like you have all these resources at your disposal. You have A-list actors. You can get teams of writers, and like movies, are so difficult to make. So like I give so much credit to inventive, interesting indie movies, and you take it. Like, you're that dumb to not even change like specifics in a scene. Yeah, that just, I have no tolerance for that, and I don't think many people do. Like, I'm not really, like I think most people would agree with that sentiment. But as someone who has also done like all indie art, that just bothers me so much.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. This is. It seems like this is not just a case of parallel thinking. Or coincidence. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and watch both of them as soon as I can, and we'll talk about that.
Reckless Rex.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go first.
So my parents came by last week, and it's funny. We're not even like really into like folk or country music at all, but we just love going to the Hollywood Bowl. And so the only concert I was playing the night that my parents were during the time that my parents were here. It was the Outlaw Music Festival, and it had enough big names where like, that sounds kind of cool. Okay. Sure, why not? So the supporting act was this chick named Sierra Hall. Not familiar with her, but she played multiple instruments, and there were a lot of like really extended jazzy, folksy solos that I liked that were pretty cool.
Okay.
Billy Strings, who was pretty killer, and then Bob Dylan played and Willie Nelson played. How's
that?
Well, I'm very much a casual fan of Bob Dylan. I know I haven't listened to all the stuff, but I know his cultural significance.
Wait, Bob Dylan isn't dead?
Yeah, he's alive.
He's still alive?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be like an AI thing. Like, oh my God. And Willie Nelson's still alive?
Yeah. Well, and I'll touch on that. So Bob Dylan, Bob Dylan,
I love Bob Dylan.
There's the stereotype that he's very unintelligible, which has only gotten worse with age, I think. And so this had to have been a rich person, but there was an interpreter, like a sign language interpreter for the entire concert. I think they were really struggling with the Bob Dylan. I think they
was Bob talking?
Singing, but I mean, then he's still just like, hey, no, I don't want to do.
Dude, in like the 2000, like South Park was ripping on him.
Oh yeah.
In like when I was in high school.
Oh yeah.
About just like pooping his pants. That's like that's pooping his pants on stage and being unintelligible. Like how is he still doing it?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say in terms of musicianship, he was doing a pretty good job. He was playing guitar and playing piano pretty well. He sounded pretty much, like unintelligible. Then Willie Nelson went up, and I'm even less a fan. I don't have anything against Willie Nelson. I know he's same thing. Like he's a very big pop cultural figure, so it's still cool just to say I saw him. His voice was actually pretty good. Like he was singing pretty well. But him playing guitar was like watching Biden. It was like, it was like his hand was shaking, and there's this sort of like we have to pretend, and we have to like clap and.
Wait, so what's your reckless wreck?
Billy Strings.
Oh, okay. All right, Billy Strings.
And actually, this is a guy who's not even really like into like folksy bluegrass types, but he's a very good musician, and there were a lot of he played multiple instruments, and there were a lot of solos. And he put on a damn good show. So Billy Strings, check him out.
Okay, Billy Strings. Yeah, to me, Willie Nelson was just always like he was the weed guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He was the weed guy, and he was the guy who I liked the song Highwayman. Yeah. And he had 4 different, and because I had the Johnny Cash. I think it was Greatest Hits, right around when he died, and that was my favorite song on that CD.
Yeah.
I'll be quick. My reckless wreck is I was thinking about what I guess I'll say. I didn't know if I should be more specific or not, but I just read Werner Herzog's autobiography, like his newest one. Every Man for Himself and God Against All, I believe is the title. I realized I knew very little of Werner Herzog as much as I knew him. Yeah. I guess I always just kind of thought of him as a documentarian, which is a big chunk of his work. Yeah. Like I knew Grizzly Man. I knew like kind of what happens. I've never seen it. And to be honest, I'd gotten so turned off from documentaries for so long because I felt them doing the opposite of what I maybe naively expected them to, which was give an objective story. Right. And then The Making a Murderer really pissed me off. I was one of those people who, I remember watching Making a Murderer. I was like a 1L in law school. Of course, I thought I knew everything. I remember like calling my brother and talking about it and the injustice. And then like you realize all the things that they left out of that. And I felt so cheated. Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, no, he did. He definitely did it. Like after like you when they take that out. So for a while I've always, and then like I saw some other documentaries that are like, this could have been 40 minutes and you made it 3 hours over 3 episodes. So anyway, I say all that to say, I read his book, which I really enjoyed. He's a extremely interesting person. Yeah. He's done things that if you just took like that one trip, like that's enough for a lifetime, let alone all the things he's done. I didn't know that about him. Yeah. Looking at his filmography before I read the book, I had only seen one of his movies. And that was unsurprisingly Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, because I'll basically watch anything with Nick Cage and New Orleans. So or New Orleans, when we put those together. But since then, I've watched Fitzcarraldo, I've watched Aguirre, the Wrath of God, I've watched Heart of Glass, and I've watched one other. Oh, Stroszek, which is my favorite out of those. So I guess to because we like to be pretty, I guess I'll say, no, what I'm going to say this. I'm going to say Stroszek. That is my reckless wreck because I loved that movie. Where I actually did not like Aguirre. I think a lot of people, it has very high reviews. It's Aguirre to me, and I wrote this in my review for it. It feels like one of those movies that you're supposed to like. And I didn't. I think it's very impressive how they filmed it, but I know I'm on a tangent here. So Stroszek, I loved that movie. I found Bruno S, as he is usually billed as, Bruno S. I love that. That actor is fantastic. He has such an interesting life. As much as I like Klaus Kinski too, as an actor, bad person apparently. But like. So speaking of incest, at least that's what Herzog believes the allegations are true, and he literally had a documentary about him called My Best Friend. So Stroszek was fantastic. I loved that. Have you seen it?
No, the only Werner Herzog movie I've seen is Nosferatu.
Okay, yeah, that's on my list too. I feel like I just watched the new one though, so I wanted to give that a little time. But Stroszek is fantastic. It's like it feels like they're actors, but I think I had a lot of like non-actors too. And I was really turned off by Italian neorealism. And this feels how like neorealism feels, but it is much better. And it's just like a really, really excellent movie. That's my favorite out of the 4 that I've seen so far of his. So that's my reckless wreck, Stroszek.
Quick side note about Werner Herzog. So I have the one book of his that I've read, and it's not even by him, but it's interviews with him. The book is called A Guide for the Perplexed. And shit, I just had it. But there's he has such a wonderful, like, understated wit. Like it's a very dry sense of humor. And there's this one thing. Here it is. So so he's a very DIY guy. Like as you probably know, like he can handle anything, and he's very hands-on. So when you're working on a bigger film for a major studio, a lot of the hands-on stuff is done by everyone else. So it's you have stage hands, you have runners and production assistants and all that stuff. Whereas the director just focuses just on directing, right? But there's but I have this quick quote here. The union caught up with us during production on Stroszek and announced they were going to send a representative to the set. I told them to meet us in Death Valley, a couple of thousand miles away from where we were shooting. I never heard from them again. And the reason why they were sending somebody out is because Werner Herzog was like, he was handling some equipment on his own. And somebody said, no, you can't do that because you might get injured, and that's against the union, blah, blah, blah. And because I can carry this box, I can carry this. Like, so that's why it's like, okay, fine. Send the union representative out here. So it's like 1,000 miles away from where we actually were.
Because he was in they were filming in Milwaukee. like in the US. Maybe not, but like Wisconsin. It was like rural Wisconsin, a little New York, a lot of Berlin, but it's not even close to Death Valley. He's super interesting guy. I added tons of his stuff too. Like even his documentaries sound really interesting. And I guess I trust him more than a lot of these other ones that would just like the newest true crime shit. So I will watch his whole canon over time. I just finished the book a couple days ago. So I don't know now. I'll probably watch them, like just kind of intersplice them in my kind of regular watching. But it was my aunt who sends me a lot of, like, she sent me the Tarantino book. She sent me the Coppola book. So she has very good taste in this stuff and has hit a lot of home runs with what she thinks I'll like.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Benjamin, stay reckless. And you too, dear listener. Fight the crits too, listener.